So you're a door knocker?
Except today.
That's fine.
Took the stuff they wanted and left me with that.
I've never done that. One time I went for the Senate one day.
I think I'm gonna stick with water. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll have a touch.
I mean,
For at least 60 days.
Yeah. Before I know how good you can be at.
sign it and they fill it out.
Yeah, keeping these things rolling, so we're not here for 4 hours. Takes a lot of time.
It does take a while. I know, and I just think
If we settle on the funding source, it's very. Yeah. They did. Everybody's sitting down. I don't want to see very selfish and money's coming.
so. This is my son's newest adventure. This is his new boat. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, where is yours?
Where is that? Where is that? It's on the St. Croix. It was on the river. He and his friends are going to be Mark Twain for that. So they're leaving as soon as their jobs are done in September. And going down the river. They're going down the river to New Orleans. And so
She got a new camera person?
he goes, what do you think, Mom? I'm like, oh my gosh. I guess you're never going to grow up, but it's good. I said, it's a beauty. Oh my gosh. Usually they have pins.
The meeting of the Iron Range Resource and Rehabilitation Board will come to order for August 23rd, 2018. Everybody is present, and let's see, we need approval of the minutes from the May 21st meeting. So moved by Betts, seconded by Sandstead. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion is adopted. We have amplifying microphones now? Is that what we have?
I don't know, do they? Oh,
Are you guys-
Sounds like it.
Huh? I feel like something's reverberating. Can you guys hear us out there okay? Yeah?
not too loud or anything? Okay.
Okay. All right, Commissioner, you have some
Yes,
comments?
I just have a couple of things. So one on a little bit of an update, because we try to bring every project we can. We have, I think, one loan on the agenda today. But we've just received a couple other. We have a manufacturing company in Virginia and then one over in Grand Rapids that we just got applications on. They'll probably go to a technical advisory committee in September. And then I'll probably act on them on desk authority because we'd want to keep it in a timely fashion, but then I'll inform the board members. It's within the desk authority that you granted me. But we're not trying, we just got the application, so sometimes the timing doesn't work perfectly for these meetings. So I just want to tell you about that. The other thing I just want to bring up to date on is, we just released $3 million of the alien equipment loan, the 3.5, which is half funded by us and half by BEAD. And the equipment is currently being installed as we speak. And they are in the process of hiring about 120 employees. It was in the paper the other day that they're just on the front end of that. They needed 96 at that point, I guess, when I saw the article. But so I just wanted the board to be aware, because that was something we had a lot of debate around this table on Helene and everything. So we're pretty excited when they're getting their equipment and getting the jobs are actually coming to fruition. So we also just released $850,000 to Hoyt Lakes to purchase the building in the Alaskan Energy Park to house Stern Industries that's moving into the area, and they are in the hiring mode. So we have a lot of need for employees at these different facilities. So anything you can do to help us spread the word. And they're all of them, I believe, are working through the local workforce centers and things like that. So we just did a groundbreaking up in Tower with the Tower EDA, and they're building a new building to house Lampa Manufacturing. We're talking about construction has already commenced, and they're talking about occupying the building before the end of the year, hopefully. And we did some of the infrastructure there, as well as provided some financing to the EDA, who will own the building. They do have another bay of the building that's available for a second business. But Lampa, if you recall from some of the publicity and discussion around this table, is one of the, I think it's the only wood stove manufacturer that meets the 2020 federal guidelines for emissions. So his business has just been exploding, and we think it's a real opportunity for our region. So that's kind of our economic development update that I'd like to give to the board. The other thing is our trails program that we approved in the budget earlier this year. The guidelines are on the agency website, and the applications, we opened applications on August 13th, and they're going to be open until September 10th, and I believe we're already in the process of receiving some of those applications, so we'll keep you posted about those. And the only other thing I want to update you on is the washout up at the Mesaba Trail near Giants Ridge. The Hector mine overflowed this spring, and we are a little bit north of $1 million in expense on fixing that problem, and that does not include the Biwabic utilities issues, which we'll probably be helping them with. So we will be, we've received $1 million in state asset preservation money that's for emergencies. So we have the majority of it covered, but we're going to be going back to the state for some additional help. Now, they probably won't help with the Biwabic utilities. And then the Mesaba Trail has some restoration. We're probably going to be sharing some of that, because we did some of the damage to the trail when we were trying to solve the erosion problem there. So we'll probably be sharing some of those costs, but the Mesaba Trail has some emergency money as well. So if there's any questions on the washout, Linda Johnson is here, and she's been doing a great job of getting the state involved and helping with the financing of all of that. So unless anybody has any questions, I think that's really all I have. Then I do have one thing that I'd like to bring to the board for action. Is the our energy retrofit program, the BRRR program that we budgeted. We've had a tremendous amount of interest in that well, we've always had a lot of interest, but we really had a lot of interest lately. And we looked at the scoring on the projects that weren't going to get funded based on budgetary constraints, and decided we'd come back to the board and probably try to find money out of our existing budget to transfer into BRRR so we can do more of these projects. Because what we're noticing is that there's a real difference in the communities when these BRRR projects get built out in the downtowns and in the commercial corridors. So we're hoping that you would allow us, because the board has oversight on the budget, to allow us to move some money from some of our other programs into BRRR so we can fund an additional $500,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I think Chris is here as well if we want to talk.
And do we have an overflow room that these people can sit in if they want to?
I don't know. Do we have the TV set up, Cheryl, in the other room or not?
Yeah, I think it is, yes.
Is it?
Yes.
So
just in case some of you want to sit down, I think.
If you want to sit down, you can go out in the
have
general office area, and there's a television that this is being televised on, so. Correct.
It's not live, but it's Memorex or whatever, no. Anyway, so any questions on the commissioner's comments or the BRRR program, or Representative Metza?
Just one question, Mr. Chair. The total then for that budget for the change would be to 1.5 million?
No, it would go from 750, we'd add 5,000, so it'd be $1,250,000.
$1,250,000, okay.
Correct.
What's this?
So there's a resolution that we need action on, 19001.
The question though is there, it says 1 million to 1.5.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
In the memo?
250 of that was designated specific to cold.
Oh, I'm sorry, so that's my fault, okay.
750 was specific to the traditional for for
Yes.
cost related?
We budgeted them both together. I apologize. So we had a 250,000 for code compliance issues and 750 for BRR. We're raising the BRR portion by 500,000. So the resolution is correct if you add the two programs together.
Okay. Second.
Just a real quick question. I think I've heard you say, Commissioner, that this is not an addition to the budget, but you're taking the money from other
Correct.
programs? Do you know what those programs are?
No, but within 30 days, we will get back to you. We're still working with the staff on identifying the things, but we will not raise the budget until we find it elsewhere, and then I'll let the board know right away. So I gave the leadership team the task of going back into the budgets and seeing where we can cost savings or programs that aren't, this being overtaxed, maybe there's some other ones. And I hesitate to name one because I'll have it wrong, but we will find it within our existing budget, because we don't, our carry forwards are a little bit precarious, because when we originally brought the budget forward, the escalator was coming back to the agency, and now it's going into the school fund, so our carry forwards aren't that strong, so we didn't want to add to our budget. We want to move the money around when we have a program that's getting this much interest.
Yeah, and there's like, what, 20 applications that we could fund with this 500,000?
30, I think there's at least 30.
Yeah, 30,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
And they scored fairly well, that's the thing. All these
Well, there's quite a bit of
applicants
leverage
have
with it
scored.
too, right?
Yes, a lot of leverage.
So,
Yep.
okay, so anyway, I'd like to move resolution 19001. Senator Bach, seconded by Representative Metza. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. What do we got next?
Thoughts on the-
RKG Enterprises.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm presenting a participation loan for RKG Enterprises. They're doing business as Midwest Aircraft Refinishing out at the Hibbing Airport. We do have two members of Midwest here with Sean Jamalis also. So it's a total $600,000 project. $200,000 would be from IRRR, $200,000 Security State Bank in Hibbing. It's to install a paint booth in would be a future hangar that's in the process of being built out there. And Midwest, it's a great company. They're bringing 90% of their revenue comes from outside the area. It's just a nice little company. They plan on hiring 6 to 10 new people. And then the project was approved at the TAC meeting on August 14th.
Just give us a little flipper on the company. I know it's doing really well. You've got a great big backlog, so just say your name for the record and then,
Mr. Chair, George Vernig with Midwest Aircraft Refinishing. We've been doing this for going on 9 years now. Started off myself, Chris Carlson, he's in the back there, and Ross Roblard. We currently employ 10 employees, all full-time. We've been, our backlog is steadily growing. We're actually starting to notice that we're finding, we're losing some of the market to the fact that we can't, capture all of it. So what we need to do in the future is, double in size, try to get the market back, in our hands, which we already do have it in our hands. Hire more people and, try to create decent, well-paying jobs in the area.
we were told you have a year backlog, is that
Yeah, actually it's 13 months now.
13 months now? What's the farthest away the planes have come from?
Germany, Australia.
They're refurbishing old Cirrus airplanes, and what's the oldest one you've done?
Serial number, I want to say it was 250 something. It was actually in the aircraft was originally painted in the facility we're at now. 18 years ago, 16 years ago.
Questions or comments on this one? Representative Sandsted, do you want to question?
Yeah, just a comment. I think this is, I remember when we first funded this, Mr. Chair, and it's been a very good investment, created some good jobs, and been a real asset, and it's exciting to see you growing and bringing in some of that overseas money to get spent here on the region.
That's what we think too. Thank you.
And you ironed out all your problems with MPCA.
Yes, we are, yes, that is all taken care of.
Good job.
I remember that.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
So Representative Sandsted moves resolution number 19002, seconded by Representative Lueck. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Chris?
Chris?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have 10 fiscal year 19 infrastructure grants for your review. Of those grants, our investment agency is $1.576 million. The total public-private investment is $12.4 million, with a leverage of $1 of IRRB investment to $7 of public-private. The first project for your review and consideration, Aiken County, they're requesting $150,000 to extend fiber to the premise as part of a broadband network. Aiken County solicited proposals to extend existing networks to bring broadband to as many residents as possible. The networks must meet the state of Minnesota broadband goals per statute 237012 of 25 Mbps download and 3 megabyte upload. The project is anticipated to serve 783 households with fiber to the home. It's Aiken County's goal to have 100% of households in Aiken County with broadband access. This project is expected to create 6 construction jobs, and this is in partnership with us, with Aiken County and private fiber providers or telecommunication providers. The second project for review is City of Biwabic, grant amount request $250,000. This is a phase 3 of a 4-phase project, upwards of $11 million, and this is a total reconstruction of streets, storm sewer, water, sewer. Basically, the city is making a massive investment in redoing the entire city's infrastructure, the oldest anyway. And this would be our third grant on that project. The next project for review is City of Chisholm, $130,000 grant. The project consists of complete infrastructure replacement of sanitary sewer, water main, storm sewer, street sidewalks, and sewer lines. The project entails replacing aging and failing lines through single-family residential area, and also upgrading the city's municipal state aid to provide a collector street for the abutting neighborhoods. I think everybody asked for more than 130, Mr. Chair. If you take a look within the budget table on each of these, you'll see what the debt services that they're taking on. And so we're trying to, based on our guidelines, leverage the most money possible on these projects to extend our dollars out as far as we can on multiple projects versus turning some folks down. So in this case, you see $250,000 for the city of Biwabic based on them taking on $2.1 million of debt for their taxpayers versus the city of Chisholm is taking on about $600,000. City of Coleraine, $250,000. They're requesting funding on behalf of the Coleraine, Bovee, Taconite Joint Water Commission. 3 communities share the services. The proposal is to replace a force main with larger pipe and upgrade pumps to handle peak flows. The alignment of this force main will also be modified so Taconite's wastewater will be pumped directly to the wastewater treatment facility in Coleraine rather than having to pump the sewage a second time. They have several MPCA issues on this, and it's a do or die. They had to make these upgrades on this project, and you can see a $2.255 million investment, large project. Cook County Grand Marais EDA, grant amount $75,000. The project consists of new water line to serve housing park redevelopment in Grand Marais. Building Blocks LLC purchased blighted property at the Gopher Cabins and Trailer Court in December of 2016 with the purpose of remaking it into affordable housing in the neighborhood where people desire to live. I toured this site, and the site was, housing-wise, it was deplorable. The investor here, the company investing, is basically demoing out everything that is in really rough shape and building new. And their community is struggling for housing up there. So this is a very good investment. City of Eveleth, grant amount $250,000. The city is requesting funding assistance for the reconditioning of the water tower, which will include sandblasting of all interior exterior surfaces to remove existing coatings. New coatings to be applied include a zinc epoxy coating on the interior, and then similar coating on the exterior. Structural repairs will be made prior to application of the coating system. It's a 750,000 gallon water tower. It was constructed in 1980. An inspection of water tower constructed by a consulting company indicated extensive miscellaneous structural modifications or repairs are required at this time.
Hot water tower or the cold water?
Cold water tower. 1.45 million total project. Goodland Township, the project consists of new sewer access road and construction of a new 2,500 square foot emergency services facility addition. The Goodland Fire Department provides fire protection as well as first response, medical, and rescue operations that include medical treatment for accidents that occur in the local highways, snowmobile trails, and new ATV trails that run through Goodland Township and surrounding areas. This includes assistance to Warba Fire Department and the townships that it contracts services for, which include Sago, Feely, Wawina. And the Goodland Fire Department also provides assistance to Floodwood for the areas around Long Lake, Floodwood Lake, and Cedar Valley Township. So within their township, they have their own service area, which is very large, but they also are able to provide emergency service response to some of Floodwood's responsibilities and some of Warba's prior to those fire departments being able to respond to those based on the distance they have to go. So very essential service and good project. City of McKinley, grant amount $50,000. The project consists of looping the city's water distribution system. McKinley's water system users are experiencing water quality issues that result in yellow, rust, or stained water to their residents. This proposed new water line loop will correct the problem and increase water quality. The project is expected to create 2 construction jobs. It's something that just has to be fixed. The water quality filters wouldn't work in the homes for the folks that have it. I mean, that's how bad that, what they're getting coming from the city of Gilbert's water line down to McKinley, it's washing everything down, and the end residents down there are getting some tough stuff. So this project would alleviate that, as I understand it. City of Nashwauk, grant amount $220,000. The project consists of replacing 3,500 feet of existing water main on 1st Street, replacement and lining of 300 feet of sanitary sewer on 4th Street. The water main was constructed over 50 years ago and has had numerous breaks and patch repairs over the years. The project also includes the replacement of 12 city streetlights. The project in conjunction with MnDOT reconstructing Highway 65 through the city. The project is expected to create 15 construction jobs, and again, you can see high leverage, $2.5 million project, and the city is going for PFA loan money for almost $1.1 million. Final project for your review, City of Tower. Grant amount $51,600. Tower Sedan Historical Society is moving forward with plans to preserve the historic fire hall located at 504 Main Street in Tower. Buildings listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Phase 1 includes stabilizing the building and repairs and restoration of the foundation, roof, doors, and window repair, and the exterior masonry repair and restoration. This phase will weatherproof the building and keep it safe from further deterioration. There will be a Phase 2 and a Phase 3. The funding for this, 90+%, is coming from the Minnesota Historical Society, but the Historical Society in Tower has to provide $51,600 upfront, cash in the bank, to be able to float construction costs, or they can't get the money from the Historical Society. So this is a way to help them make this project a reality.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I have just a comment first. I just want to say that I appreciate Chris's work. Senator Eichhorn and I spent a good part of the day with him in Coleraine looking at the ice arena and looking at the ski hill and trying to contemplate how we might approach some of those issues. Chris, you just have a really good handle on resources, and you're proactive, and it was just a pleasure to work with them and kind of brainstorm together about what we might do there. So I just want to let people know that we got some good folks here. But I have a couple of questions, mostly having to do with state money. The first one is on the broadband project in Aiken. Was this a project that was in the application process for state broadband money and didn't get it, or wasn't there enough money in the state to get it, or?
So as, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Representative Lehman, as I understand it on this project, the Aiken County basically made a commitment that said, we're going to build a program and we're going to commit $150,000 a year to invest in fiber, to get fiber to the home within our entire county. And so this is their initiative. What they did was they ended up putting it out for RFPs, proposals from private companies. How much will you extend? What will your investment be? And they got some applications back, and they got 2 really strong applications. And they basically came down to, we can fund the one, but not the second one. And they turned to us and say, you're within our service area. Will you partner with us so we don't lose this project, increase the construction cost, help make this a reality? So we looked at that as a timely investment. Had they applied to the state?
Yeah, what,
That's a very good question. I would guess not.
yeah, who is the provider in Aiken?
CTC, but to go back a little bit on the question about state broadband money, this would build onto a major project that was funded, Mille Lacs Energy and CTC over at Baxter put in a huge one. It's basically done. But this is the periphery, and that first state broadband grant only covered this much. This adds 2 more pieces beyond that. Now, it's very important to understand that this is, Aiken County is running, they've got their own, these are $150,000 of local dollars, so they operate their own much smaller broadband program. And as we all know right now, there isn't a whole lot of money sitting in the state broadband dollar coffers to even apply for. And put a little further into context, it's no fun being at, what do you want to call it, the bottom of the list or the top of the list. Aiken County is the worst in the state of Minnesota, 87 out of 87. And this is, you know, you go beyond where these projects are, and you don't get nothing.
How do you get reelected?
Hey, we're making progress. We're making progress.
The other thing I want to
Lehman, go ahead.
I have a follow-on question, but you were going to say something, Chris?
I just want to clarify that there's, as Representative Lewick stated, there's 2 components to this. They're funding the Mille Lacs component because it's outside of our TA. We're funding a component within Aiken County that fits within the TA.
In fact, just to follow along a little bit with what Chris said, and I had a discussion this morning with the county administrator to make they understand intimately that they have local Aiken County dollars, and they've got good provision in there to make sure that in Aiken County, the boundaries for the Taconite Resource Area or Aiken County School District, they know exactly where those boundaries are, and not a penny of the IRRB money is going outside of that boundary. But to give you an idea of this expanse, they're also funding another project with local dollars up in the McGregor area, which benefits the McGregor School District, which is outside of the district.
Okay, well, it's good to know how these local solutions are happening. I'm out door knocking, and I'm running into people that have no broadband or little broadband, and they're just outside of maybe the project area that's being funded by the state. So it's good to hear how we're filling in the gaps there. And my other question, off of the broadband now, is I'm just going through all the other public works and wastewater infrastructure grants, and I know I've been working I worked last session, or the 2017 with the City of Coleraine. I've been working for last 2 sessions with Deer River, trying to get some PFA money, and I don't see a lot of PFA money in these projects. And so I'm just wondering if you could just comment on that. Are they just not making the ranks to get PFA money? And then the other question is the PFA money that we are getting, like in Nashwauk, is that pure loan? Is that pure debt service, or is there any grant money at all coming?
That's pure loan, Representative members of the board. That's pure loan, and and I will never correct you because what you're saying is completely accurate, but there's PFA in several of these projects. If I look at Nashwauk, if I look at USDA being the alternative to PFA,
Right.
one of the two is going to fund. I see that on the Coleraine project, they went to USDA. Eveleth is doing PFA. If they can qualify, generally these cities on these bigger projects, that's where they have to. On a smaller project like the city of McKinley, PFA is not going to entertain it. They can't take on that debt load already with the debt load that city has. So it's too small a project. But generally speaking, on the projects that are water sewer related that you're looking at here, by Wabic, you don't see PFA, you see their general obligation bonding.
Yes.
But as part of the whole $11 million package, they do have that. It might have been on phase 2 or phase 3. So they've piecemealed, this is what type of funding we're going to put for each phase. They couldn't get it multiple times. They got this much on the whole deal. This is more of a construction phase than it is a funding phase. So if I were to pull out that big picture of what this project really is, which would take up probably half of this memo page, you would see all those other funders on there. So generally speaking, they are. Or Chisholm's went, and they had Minnesota State aid dollars in the tune of $1.25 million. So, Commissioner.
Yeah, and I think we're on the same page. We try to, so increasing quality of life, jobs, and then leverage. Those are like the 1, 2, 3 legs of the stool around here now, and when it comes to public works. So if you look at this, we're recommending, I think, $1 million and some odd $100,000 on $12 million. So we're trying to leverage PFA, USDA, community investment, but making it affordable. So we do look at the PFA, all of us, including ourselves, look at the rates in the community. So if somebody has really high rates, we might be more favorable to providing more of the local match. If they have really low utility rates, they're going to have to bond for some of it, you know. So it's, you know, I think we're all on the same page. We're trying to maximize where we can get other funding in these projects, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Bach.
No.
No.
Well, just a quick comment. I wanted to thank you for bringing this forth, especially with the Aiken County issue. It really shines a light on the issue we have with broadband in rural Minnesota. And I'm glad the agency can step in and kind of help fill that gap. But this is where we need to be working harder down in St. Paul to make sure that rural Minnesota is being served the way they need to, because in all honesty, this is a utility like anything else. And it's rural Minnesota is really taking a hit on this. So I'm glad we can do this, but I want to encourage us to keep working harder.
Any other comments or questions on funding package? Who wants to move 19-003?
I'll move it.
Representative Ruick moves.
Second.
Resolution 19-003, seconded by Representative Sandsted. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adopted. Okay. Mountain Iron School District, Roy. Okay.
Your broadband.
Marginal.
Use a satellite dish.
I did, and it's too expensive. I did 8 years.
Right.
It's the only way that
Go ahead.
dial up a satellite.
Thank you, Chair Tomasoni, Commissioner Phillips, members of the board. We have 4 education-related items for you to consider today. The first one is from the Mountain Iron Buell School District. The school district is requesting up to $25,000 to collaborate with the Confucius Institute at St. Cloud State University on the development and delivery of a Chinese language program. While these classes would physically occur at Mountain Iron Buell High School, schools throughout the region will benefit as classes will be offered via telepresence during multiple periods throughout the day for students in other districts. Currently, students from Mountain Iron Buell, Virginia, Eveleth Gilbert, and St. Louis County Schools are registered for the 2018-2019 academic year. I have shared Superintendent of Mountain Iron Buell, St. Louis County Schools, Reggie Ingebretson here, as well as Christy Berlin, the Director of Teaching and Learning, to answer any questions that we might have.
Either one of you want to come up and make a comment? Go Welcome. Just say your name for the record. Okay.
Reggie Ingebrigtsen.
Christy Berlin.
Okay, go ahead. Do you want to comment on anything that was said, or are you just happy to be here? Or?
Very happy to be here, yes. We see this as an exciting opportunity.
Senator Bach.
I'm just curious, maybe, do we know how much interest there is on our part of students across the campuses, or is it still too new to know relative to the telepresence provision?
In terms of how many
Do we
students?
know how many likely are going to take the program?
Yeah, we already have how many?
We have about 20 students on site at Mount Iron Buell taking classes, and then the numbers range from 5 at some of the St. Louis County schools up to 20 from other school districts. So, and it's growing because as we were building this, but as we have a teacher in place and a face to put there has made a big difference. So, hoping to grow to other school districts too.
I think this should be known as the Senator Bach actual project.
He gets to move it.
I get $25,000.
I just have a detailed question. The summary that we get for these projects is really short. It's a little paragraph, so I don't have the detail here. But as I was looking at this, the question that came to mind is, if this is a class that's being delivered in this school year, which starts next week, and you have 20 students enrolled and several from other, what is the $25,000 covering? If the class has been advertised, marketed, you've got everything in place, it's ready to roll, what is the $25,000 covering?
Some of that is for the curriculum that we need to purchase the books and textbooks. And then as part of that collaboration with the Confucius Institute, we're obligated to pay for her health insurance through St. Cloud State University and for 1 master's credit. She's working on her master's in teaching Chinese as a second language. She just came here from China on Saturday, so this last week was training at St. Cloud State University, and we have someone picking her up at 4 o'clock today from St. Cloud to bring her up. And then part of that is the housing cost. She's only obligated or can give out of the funding she receives $200 a month for rent. And so we have a teacher at Mountain Iron Buell who's opening her home, her and her family, to her. She doesn't drive, so we need to be able to get her from point A to point B and expose her to the culture up here. So fortunately, it's another teacher at Mountain Iron Buell that'll be able to bring her to work every day. And then so some of those are the costs, and we kind of like to supplement the family for more than $200 because of food, and she'll have some money to provide winter clothing. But there are some obligations we have with the Confucius Institute. Does that help?
So if the agency didn't supply the $25,000, what would you do?
Well, Mountain Iron Buell would have to look at those costs, and then we'd look at what we're going to do. Since we're using telepresence and through EIP and the Cisco, then we may have to look at a fee for some of the other districts for the class and help to supplement.
I guess I would just recommend, because we're really promoting collaboration and planning, and I know Mountain Iron got a significant sum from this account to promote collaboration. And the question I would have is, are we going to see additional grant requests whenever the collaboration actually happens?
From Mountain Iron Buell?
Yes.
Or from?
Yes.
I don't know how to, I don't know.
This is collaboration.
I don't.
Mr. Chairman, this is what the account is intended for. Those of you school superintendents watching, it's intended to expand the educational opportunity, curriculum opportunities in these range schools to something that we don't do today. So don't bring a project that just builds a new building. Let's find some innovative things where we can improve curriculum for our kids that live here. So this is going to be an interesting experiment to see how many young people might be interested in taking Chinese instead of German. The German that they're never going to use. Chinese that U.S. Steel might be banging your door down to hire you once you develop that language. So this really is kind of what we had talked about, and the way to try to provide some money, and hopefully some school districts will pick it up and try to expand curriculum some. So Mike, congratulations to you, Reggie, for getting this going. And we'll see if kids have any interest, but we'll see.
You're right, all I know is they've been to east, and I've never used it, so I don't know. I don't know.
Is that taconite pellet?
No, that's German. So, Representative Stansted.
So because this is a telepresence course, why are we taking it out of this fund rather than out of EIP, which is all about telepresence, and that's why EIP was created. That's how EIP has been marketed to the districts, specifically for this pairing and sharing and telepresence delivery.
Right.
Mr. Chair, Representative Sansett, I can take a little bit of run from a budgetary perspective, and that is the fact that the funding, the last round of funding that we used for Education Innovation Partners was really pre-spent. And I say that because districts had invested a certain amount of money in the telepresence products, the switches, the routers, and whatnot, up to a certain amount. So when the grant went from the IRRB to EIP, basically those dollars were all predetermined on how they were going to be spent anyway. They went to pay those invoices off from the money that the districts had to invest in telepresence, in the screens, in the room restructuring, in the switches and the routers. So there was very little left over to actually do something like this in that round of funding. And so the money that they did have left over, they invested in the teaching and learning project, as you know, as LSI. And so right now, EIP's coffers in terms of being able to fund something like this, they don't have those funds right now.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Reggie, great job on this. I think, just to kind of finish up in response to what you were asking, Representative Lehman, this is collaborative between Mountain Iron and Buell, and going to go out to all the schools in that district, so I thought that should just be clear. So,
a question for the superintendents in the room. On the school fund, are there guidelines that you've been given when you're considering projects to follow?
Well, let's wait till somebody's up here. Maybe, I don't know, are you just directing it to somebody, or?
Well, we have a superintendent at the table here.
Well,
My understanding, and again, I'm new at the superintendent role, but my understanding is it is about collaboration. It's not supposed to be about bricks and mortar. And so when Senator Bach expressed an interest in having Chinese, I had a connection in St. Cloud and thought this is a great way to collaborate and a good use of the dollars, because it is going to reach students more than just in the Mountain Iron Beal School District. And we have telepresence units in the 17 school districts, so across the range and opportunities. So to me, this fit as part of that.
But have you received guidelines? I mean, is there something that you're working from, or is it just kind of an understanding in terms of collaboration?
I think there are guidelines we have been given. My understanding.
There are guidelines. Those guidelines are posted on our website. I would have to defer to Mr. Betchik on this, but to my recollection, the board has never taken official action on those guidelines. But they are out there. They are on the website. There's two types. There's the bricks and mortar portion of the fund that is dependent on referendum and collaboration with another district, and then there is the innovative curriculum side of the fund, whereby which I believe this project would fall under.
And I don't want to leave a sour taste in people's mouths, but I guess my criticism is more from lack of detail and not understanding how we could have a program up and running in a week, and yet it's these details like where is the teacher going to live, things like that haven't been handled yet. So I would feel more comfortable if we were funding things up front with a plan rather than trying to fill shortfalls afterwards. That's my question.
Any other comments?
I think it would be helpful if, as a board, we establish those guidelines and have them voted on in place moving forward, because our room is full of school districts, and everybody has their own interpretation of what collaboration really is or what it could look like. And we're going to be faced with the reality of having to choose, is collaboration district to district, is it district to community? There's many interpretations already, and when do we say yes and when do we say no? And I think this is the pathway that we're moving down, and now we have EIP, which is, in my understanding, set up specifically for this. And if the money has been spent elsewhere, I think it's a great program, I think it's a great idea, but I think it might be the wrong funding stream. And
Well, to be clear, the funding stream is the same for every single program that we have at this place. It's the production tax.
yes,
And we put them into different funds. So it's not as if the money's not all coming from the same place. So we might have some programs that we might be aiming to get some results out of, but the funding stream is exactly the same for all of them. So I don't think we should quibble over where the money comes from, if you want to know the truth. Any other comments? Senator Bach moves resolution 19004, seconded by Representative Metsa. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
no,
Motion is adopted. Okay.
Yep.
19005.
Mr. Chairman, can I, if I may? I'm going to kind of recuse myself for public purposes. I'll let you know that my son's the technology director at the Chisholm School, so when this first came forward with the meeting with Superintendent Blanchard, I said you're going to have to work with Roy on this one because I don't want any conflicts of interest or anything like that, so I will not be commenting on this.
We don't get a vote, I don't think.
I know. I just want to let people know.
Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next project, the Chisholm School District is requesting up to $700,000 for the development and delivery of a pilot project that will allow students who are not currently attending the school district for a variety of reasons to connect and attend digitally from any location. Other districts in the region are facing similar situations and additional competition from online high schools from outside the region as well. A successful proof of concept project in Chisholm could be shared with other districts to help keep students and their educational dollars in the taconite assistance area, reduce absenteeism, increase graduation rates, and better prepare students for the world of work. The project also leverages the investments the agency has made in regional connectivity and telepresence technology via the Education Innovation Partners project. Superintendent Janie Blanchard of Chisholm is here, along with the Director of IT, Joe Phillips, to answer any questions that you might have.
Welcome to the board. Just say your name for the record and go ahead and tell us what's going on here.
I'm Janie Blanchard, I'm Superintendent of Chisholm.
And Joe Phillips, Director of Technology.
Right. And what we're asking to do is to be a pilot program, to bring in this new technology that's coming. When I went to an EIP meeting and Cisco was presenting that now we can digitally bring kids into the classroom. So we're looking at a project where, an example I have is I had a student last year who missed 120 mornings of school because his anxiety was so high he couldn't get in there. He could have digitally came in, taken reading and math, and then been able to come into the building. This technology works on any device, any of your cell phones, any tablets, any kind of connective device that works with. We want to be the pilot. We want to work with other schools. As we go forward, we think we're small enough we can do this and not have big pitfalls or problems. But if we do, we can share that with the other schools. Also part of our collaboration model, and I did write this up for you, is that I called Cisco and I said, what schools in the state are doing this? Who's doing it now? And they told us that Deer River and the IS schools were going to that. So I called Matt Gross, and I think he's here, and asked him if he would collaborate with me on this. Matt has been a leader, our Superintendent Gross has been a leader in one-to-one devices in the area, and now he's looking at going to this process. So we will be collaborating. When I talked to someone else, we said, well, what about student collaboration? And that started a whole range of thoughts for me of, can you see a connected classroom, Deer River, Chisholm, science classroom working on the same project with kids communicating with each other and working through the problems with that. Generation Z, this group, they don't see a big difference between digital and physical worlds. And we in education need to start embracing that and bringing it in.
Not really, no.
Is this going to make it easier for kids not to go to school?
You know, I've really thought a lot about that, and some of that is going to depend on the parent. There are, a lot of our parents want their children up going to school. We also have a growing number of students who are coming in from doctor's notes saying their anxiety is so high they cannot physically be in our buildings, and we need to reach out to them. We're also looking at a way to, it's been homeschooling over here, public school over here. I want to bridge that and start bringing them back in and helping them meet the needs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And last year at the legislature, there was talk about this type of application for snow days, so teachers would be able to keep teaching. Have you, or do help kids with homeworks and stuff like that? Have you talked to the bargaining agents or bargaining units about that? Because it was quite
We've addressed it. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have addressed it. We are not settled yet on our contracts, but that will be a piece of it.
Well, yeah, a couple questions. I just did a little bit of research and talked to some of the people in Grand Rapids School District, because they've been talking about the availability of online instruction for quite some time. They're really pleased with Infinity Online that they participate in. About 40 school districts use Infinity Online, and I think there's like 1,000 students are enrolled. And so my question is, you know, that's a model that's already been approved by the state, it's been used by several school districts. Is that something you've looked at? I understand Northeast Service Co-op has also an online program. And then as I was talking to folks that are in technology, they brought up EIP and, you know, said really all you have to do is create a WebEx account and anybody can tap into the classroom. That's one of the beauties of the technology that we have through EIP. It's just a lot of questions about what we already have out there and what the cost break-even point would be for one school, Chisholm, to not use any of the existing programs and build your own program. You know, what would how many students would you need to break even, total cost, things like that?
Well, in looking at that, I did look at Affinity and some of those. Mm-hmm. What I'm more focused on is Chisholm students not attending Chisholm schools or homeschooled kids and bringing them into the situation. The break even, I couldn't give that to you off the top of my head. I didn't prepare for that, I'm sorry. With the other pieces of it, I see this as the way school education's going. And I think with Chisholm, and it does use some of the telepresence that we do have, but we do not have enough of it to encompass all of the education pieces we want to do.
And since this is a pilot project, we're going to find out whether or not it works, right?
Right,
and,
right.
And if it does work, it may be something that spreads to other school districts in a big hurry, I would think. Is that correct?
It is correct, and I'm also looking at USDA long-distance funding for down the road, not coming back here, but down the road, USDA long-distance learning, this fits their criteria. I did not hit the grant cycle rate, and I'm working with a field rep right now for that. I'm also looking, Blandon is doing all the broadband, and this fits within their parameters of reaching some of our kids in Balkan, and how do we get that? We're looking at also with talking to Blandon about possibly hotspots, those little devices to help the kids that are not connected out there.
Well, I guess since I can take a jab at the Trump administration, I'll take a little one here. I hope that we figure out this. I just read an article yesterday on the data capping and the firefighters all over not being able to access in real time because the companies came through with the changes that we've seen on a federal level, not being able to get the data access that they need. So I hope that, you know, the AT&Ts, Verizons, and others out there watching realize that the reason they have a customer base is because of all the people in this room, the students, and I hope they let them utilize it to the fullest potential. I just wanted to commend, there's a couple things here, you know, I'm looking at a 6-year adventure on the board here and working for the district, I know I brought up in a lot of meetings having more done with the classrooms in regard to EIP and, you know, the Chinese program. I think that all these things are moving forward, and I'm really proud that we're actually starting to get, you know, down the road from where we were. And so regardless of what happens with it, I think this is exactly what the account was created for, in my mind, was to push the envelope and see what we could really do to provide better education to students all throughout the district in the ways that they need to learn. And I think having the teachers at the table I was really glad to hear your answer to Representative Eklund in making sure that contractually we're respecting their hard work as well and their expertise.
This actually, I think, will increase our need for teachers.
Awesome to hear.
Any other comments?
Can you tell us some more about the collaboration that you have built into this project, or what that looks like today?
As of today, and talking with the superintendent and stuff, they already have the one-to-one devices, which is what we're asking for grades 4 through 12 in the first year. We want to see what they learn from that process, what pitfalls to avoid, how to set that up and run it effectively and financially effectively. Down the road, then we will want teachers collaborating with each other and students. When you do this WebEx and you set it up, it's through Schoolology, right? How do the kids connect?
Cisco WebEx.
Cisco WebEx, but then we set up classes in Schoolology. And teachers will be able to actually maybe even team teach. One from Deer River and one from Chisholm team teaching a science class or a math class. And students interacting with each other as they go through that process.
So the collaboration is down the road. It's not.
Well, yeah, well, we'll know if Deer River will start immediately with the one-to-one. The collaboration with the rest of the range schools will be as we begin the process, letting them know, you know, which way to walk, what to do, what equipment works, which ones maybe you shouldn't get, how to avoid this. That will start as we bring the equipment in and begin to work with them. Our whole goal is to work with all of the schools up here.
So on that, and you and I have had a conversation about, you know, online programs. If all of the schools were to start, I don't want to say consolidate, collaborating online, are we forming a new school district electronically?
Could
I mean,
be.
is this like a new online school, in which case I think we're out of our league?
Well, and who knows? I mean, I don't know what all we're going to find. This is exciting technology to me. I think this generation of students will love this. What I've seen, when I've been researching it, is the kids actually wind up teaching the teachers about how to use this and how to make it work and things like that. This is the generation that we are now teaching. Devices in their hands, connective. I have a 12-year-old granddaughter, and it about killed her when her phone died when she was up visiting me because she couldn't Snapchat with her friends. The connectivity is there, and I think the kids can work with each other. And it might be, down the road, a new horizon.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, well, I guess just for my personal interest is I would like, and I would talk to staff here, Roy, and other staff, that I would just like you to take some time and really examine what's available already and tell us as a board how this differs from that. I mean, just give us more detail.
Okay.
Because, you know, I was under the assumption that EIP was advancing technology in the classroom. That was like its #1 goal and focus area. And I do know that there's several programs that are state approved that are, or at least one for sure that's state approved, another one at the Northeast Service Club. I would just like to know, for $700,000 is a lot of money if we're going to be duplicating something that we already have. We really need to know how that's going to be spent, broken down, what that's going to be used for, what the measures of success would be, what the timeline on the pilot would be. More detail than we can have here in one paragraph.
Okay.
And, right. Mr. Chair, Representative Lehman, we have that laid out in the business plan.
Right.
That was submitted to us, and should have probably included it in the board packet, but it was getting thick.
It was getting thick.
So if you want to give us some assurance of
Certainly. We can provide that before you leave.
Can you tell her a little bit about it?
Well, I don't have it in front of me either, Mr. Chair, so but I can grab it in between. Do you have it with you, I believe?
I have some pieces of it. The collaboration model is what I brought to you today as I was putting that together before the meeting the last couple of weeks. And then I also have some recommendations from the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development of Chisholm.
In your proposal, as it is today, when would you begin this type of digital learning? Not this school year, next school year? What is your thought?
Our timeline is a 4-year. The first year, we will bring the one-to-one initiative for the grades 4 through 12. The second year, then we will put the Cisco devices in the classrooms and begin to do the collaboration with Deer River. The third year and the fourth year will be then, we are going to hire a consultant to come in and to make sure that we are hitting our goals of increased attendance, graduation rates, or not hitting it, and have them examine it. And we will also be working in collaboration with the other schools as questions come up.
Would there be any advantage to tabling this for a year, postponing it for a year, letting the technology through EIP be placed as, working with your technology person on that, getting that in place before you're jumping in right now? Because you don't have the foundation right now. This is why you're coming to us, correct?
We do not have the devices that we need to start this. And so that's why the first year is just getting the mobile devices to the students. The second year is putting the classroom kits in.
Just so I understand, I'm familiar with EIP. I think that was specifically built to build out a room or two maybe in a building. And in listening today, what I'm hearing is this would make additional equipment available in each classroom.
Right.
And so it wouldn't just be the EIP room that's getting used, it would be every classroom is getting technology, and then the students would also be taking home a tablet or something, and so it would cover those upfront costs. Right. Okay.
Just to be clear, Deer River is not in the taconite assistance area.
Doesn't mean you can't
Well,
collaborate.
I faced lots of questions when I brought a project to the table for this fund, and I am just trying to be consistent that we need to have proven collaboration within the taconite assistance area. That's happening right now. I would entertain a motion to table this for future discussion. I think it needs more work.
I think they know exactly what they're doing. I don't think we need to table this at all. I would like to see this passed today and let them run with it. It's a pilot project that could potentially show us some future needs in our schools that are not being met, and that could actually work very well with EIP and actually make EIP even better. And just having some personal experience about kids that don't want to go to school and want to have homeschooling and have technology in the school. This is exactly the type of stuff that would work really well for those type of kids that are experiencing some kind of instructional anxiety that is really, really hard for parents and families to deal with sometimes. And I think this is exactly the right spot to start. The word pilot is why we should do it. We should get it going immediately and see what happens, and find out how it works. And it sounds to me like they're going down the right road. Representative Sandstead, this
Thank
is
you.
in your district, by the way.
I understand this. And I want to say I support our schools and I support our students. The problem your district is facing is the same problem every school district is facing, whether you're on the range or not. And I think there is great potential here, but I too think that there's still a little more work that needs to be done. I would just like to see some of these details fleshed out a little bit more. So should we give our stamp of approval on this? And we have to be accountable to our taxpayers as well for such a large chunk of change. And we have more substance to really put in their hands and say, here's what's going to happen. I'd like to see how EIP is actually functioning, working alongside with you, and ensuring that when this happens, that it's going to be successful, because that's extremely important. And like I said, this is a real problem. There's no doubt about it. It's a real problem for every school district. And as you collaborate, I think I need the answer of, are we forming a new school district digitally? I mean, is that something that's going to be happening? Because if you move on this, Hibbing is going to say we have the same thing, Virginia is going to say we have the same thing, Nashwauk-Keewatin is going to say we have students that, struggle with this. And are they going to keep coming back to us for just collaborative grants between a couple of school districts, or are we going to look at this in a broader scope? And I think a little more time is needed on this.
Well, you're not going to know the answer if you don't start the pilot. And you have to start the pilot in order to get the answer. And that's what they're trying to do here. And I think if you say we're not going to fund it, well, then it doesn't happen and then nobody does it. So to find out if this is worth doing, we have to start the pilot. And I think that's what this is all about.
There's two parts to the request, as I understand. There's parts for devices, and then there's parts for the platform. And the devices are the least expensive of the, if we funded a portion of this and got the devices in your hand, are there other areas where you could start testing the waters through programs that already exist to see if it's going to be successful?
It does say up to 700,000, so. Right. They're gonna find things out as they move down the road here, I think. Right? Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But for our budgeting, we're either approving that dollar amount or we're not. So I'm wondering, is there a way of?
Well, when we say up to, though, it doesn't mean we give them 700. It means that they come and request it, and eventually they may or may not get it. So, correct? Okay. Representative Metz, you want to move this resolution?
Sure.
Second, Senator Bach. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion is adopted. 1906, Eveleth Gilbert.
It's so real.
Mr. Chair, the next item up on the agenda is with the Eveleth Gilbert School District and Virginia School District. Over the past 14 months, the school districts of Eveleth Gilbert and Virginia have been conducting a series of joint school board meetings and community focus groups to study ways to improve the quality of high school education on the east end of the range and bring more 21st century learning principles to students. In addition, both school boards agree that they want a high school experience that is hands-on, project-based, and focused on the realities of the local and regional job market. The districts are requesting up to $100,000 to continue moving forward with the next phase of the project that includes an extensive facilities study. I have Superintendent Jeff Terry from Eveleth Gilbert and Superintendent Noel Schmidt from Virginia here to answer any questions. Gentlemen?
Jeff Terry, Superintendent of Gilbert Schools.
Noel Schmidt, Superintendent of Virginia.
What would you like us?
Well, Mr. Chair and Board, thanks for having us here today. So I left some information in front of you, a little PowerPoint, just kind of going over what we have accomplished over the past 14 months, like Roy said. It should only take me about 2 hours to get through this. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to roll through it pretty quick out of respect for your time, because Roy kind of alluded to a lot of it, but this has been going on for about the last 14 months. Both our school boards have met on 9 different occasions, wide range of topics, and after about the 4th meeting, we kind of keyed in on this academies concept, and the model in Minnesota comes out of Alexandria, which you may have heard, but you can see on the first couple pages just a couple things that got us together in the first place. One is the obvious declining enrollment that all of us are suffering from. Both of us are in the top 5 oldest buildings in the state of Minnesota. And then there's, of course, the need for our high school curriculum, just the kids nowadays are, you know, the world around us is changing, and I don't know that schools necessarily have been so much, and we're looking at doing something a little bit different. So when you combine all those problems, the population, the enrollment, and outdated facilities, and most importantly, the pressure to deliver a better education to our students, that's what brought us together. And like I said, after about the fourth meeting, we started looking at this academies model. You can see, about, I didn't number the pages, but about 4 pages in, you can see the dates that we've been meeting just about once a month as a collaborative board. Not so much lately because we have kind of keyed in on this Alexandria model, the academies model. So now we actually have some other focus groups in place trying to get answers. We've had 4 different groups, mostly business people, school, parents, students even, actually go down to Alexandria and visit, and all came back with great enthusiasm. After that, the boards decided they wanted more interest. Both boards decided they wanted to gauge the community interest to see if our population, our constituents, were actually interested in doing something like this. So Noel and I organized 40 different sessions over about a month-and-a-half period. We met with chambers of commerce, church groups, students, faculty. I mean, we hit just about everybody over the course of that month and a half, and overwhelmingly, the people coming to those meetings were very much in support. You can see on the page after the listening page, photos there, you can see where we all were, the 40 of them. And then you can see the questions that we were asking. We gathered all that information together. And then we brought that back to both boards and explained that to them, and they also wanted us to do a general community survey. So we sent a survey out to all of our residents in all 3 communities. And you can see on the next couple pages, these are bar graphs. In Virginia, it was ranged anywhere from about 70, average about 75% of all the residents said yes, we should be moving forward and looking at this. Over on the Eveleth Gilbert side is about 80%. We're saying yes, you should be looking into this. So then, in May, both boards met again, and they passed a resolution to develop a plan to move forward with how we're going to actually plan how this could work. So you can see on a page that looks like this, there's a little timeline, and this is where we're going to get into why we're here today, as to what we're doing right now. Last night, we just finished up with, we started with an academic task force, and what they were looking at, we had a group of over 70 business people and parents that got together over 3 nights trying to look at what would academies look like, what would make sense, what are the career paths that would most make sense up here on the east end of the Iron Range. And we came up with a really good product that my counterpart here will explain in a little bit. We're moving on now into Facilities Committee, Finance Committee, Communications, and the Transportation Committee. And with the purpose of looking, with the facilities, we're looking at the facilities we currently have, and then looking at the academic model that we want to go to, and can we accomplish that with what we have. The Finance Committee, obviously, how we're going to pay for this whole thing. Communications, you know, how are we going to communicate this to the public? And then, of course, transportation, getting the kids there, wherever there is. So the next few pages, I just kind of went through a few things that the academic task force went through, just some of the career fields and clusters. There's an example of what Alexandria's academy model looks like. You can see that they have 4 different academies there, and the list below are the career paths that students can choose within those academies. So our goal now, actually on a page that looks like this, you can see what the academic task force came up with, and Noel will talk a little bit more about that. On the last few pages, and they're all pictures, just a kind of an idea of what we're looking at. You can see on the first page is a traditional classroom, set up much like this, desks in rows, teacher in front. And then on the next several pages, you can see what Alexandria has done and kind of what we are looking at as different types of learning spaces that allow for more project-based learning and more collaboration with local businesses. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Schmidt here.
You'll be happy to note that on a per pupil basis, our request is the smallest of the requests that you're going to hear today. What we're trying to do, as the commissioner earlier talked about, is the stool, the three-legged stool. Well, what we're looking at is all focused academic kids. We're talking high school here between two districts. So the three legs that we're looking at, the first leg is K-12. So we're looking at K-12 kids. Right now we're looking at high school, but the count we're asking you to consider from is the K-12 count. We're looking at collaboration. This is a huge deal. There isn't any other school in the entire state of Minnesota that is doing anything like this, getting two different districts together, school board members, parents, kids, everything together. Nobody else is doing anything like this. And then the third leg is the academic component, the uniqueness, the partnership, because what we're talking about here is we're talking about kid programs for high school kids. And between the two districts, we're talking 800 kids who might be impacted by this, because 200 kids between the two high schools together we're looking at. And so there's nobody else in the state of Minnesota who's looking at this, who can even get this far to the table. And so what we're asking the board for is consideration to help us get through to December. You have the plan in front of you. You can see what the community has come up, and they've approved it. Both boards have said, we like this, after a long series of public input. And so we're asking the board is for $100,000 to help just get us through December. We understand that we need skin in the game, so we're asking our own boards to throw in $10,000 in addition to the other monies that they already have spent. So what we're asking for is just help get us through the next couple of months, which are important in addition to everything else, because there's 4 more committees. And just to give you an idea about how many people are coming to these committees, the first one that just got done last night, we've had 3 meetings. There were 62, 42, and 50 people there last night. And this is teachers, business people, parents where their kids are there. So this is not a small group of people. So we're asking for your consideration for us to help us keep moving so we can help with our kids, our high school kids, and do a game changer as far as helping them with careers and education and working with area businesses. So that's our humble request as we come here today.
Questions?
Of course. How much have each of your districts spent on this process so far?
Virginia has probably spent over $20,000 on this project.
We're probably around the $50,000 mark right now at Eveleth Gilbert. We started some facility studies prior to conversations with Virginia.
So you've started some
We started for Eveleth Gilbert. We've been in this for about 2.5 years trying to make improvements to our high school education program, and we stumbled across each other in a meeting one day, and that's kind of how this started then with the two of us.
Who's doing the facility study? Or who?
We have had, through the process, we had Ann Glumac work with, when we first started with the 2 boards, Ann Glumac was working with us. And since then, now that we're working with more of the educational end with this task force, we've hired ICS out of Duluth.
I think, Mr. Chair, Representative Sand said, were you asking about the facilities study?
Yes, who's going to conduct it?
Who will conduct this one coming up?
It is ICS that we're working with that's working on the facility study. I've already had a facility study that was done by IRRR, but it needs to be combined with, we're doing more of a space. See, I was doing it more of how to more economically use the space that we had, and now we're looking at how can we change the space we have to accommodate the programs that we want to do. So it's a little bit different study.
But our current staff is still heavily involved in this, because we don't want to just blindly accept what somebody else says. So our buildings and grounds guy from both districts, they're going to be heavily involved in this, along with their principals and all of our other staff on the facilities end of it. Because there's some important questions we want to know. And the community, and they've told us that, we know this because of all the sessions we've had, they want to know, can you do this in your current facilities? And so we got to look at that and answer that question. And then people want to know, okay, if there's any remodeling costs, what are you looking at? How much is that going to cost it? So in fairness to our taxpayers, we want to be able to tell them, this is, if we do this, this is the likely tax that you're going to see. Because one of the issues is, if we also have to answer to the taxpayers, if it's us alone, okay, if we want to do this, what are we looking at? So on the money end of that, we want to be prudent and conservative with that. And so, but that's what we sort of a combo of the ICS and a combo of our own folks and the citizens who would be on the task force to get their ideas about what they thought about all of this.
So in the money that both of your districts have spent so far, is that money straight from the district? Have there been other grants? Has it been leveraged somehow to, or is that all out of the school's budget?
You've actually, some of it is IRRB money from earlier smaller grants. The other came straight out of our general supply.
Last question, do you know what your fund balances are right now?
I can tell you exactly what our fund balance is. 2.6 million in Virginia, which is 12.1% of our annual operating costs. And if this question is kind of heading towards why don't we take it out of our general operating costs or the fund balance, is that Virginia side, the state auditor recommends 3 to 5 months worth of money in reserve. Virginia, we have 2 months. We're on the low side of it. The GFO organizations, finance officers, their recommendation is to have 35 to 50% of government agencies in reserve. And these are all public. You can find them anywhere on the web and documents, and I can get that to you if you would like. Their recommendation is 35 to 50%. So Virginia, we're at 12.1%. We're way under those. Eveleth Gilbert, I think you guys are at 40%, which is in the guidelines for the GFO.
Do you know what yours is specifically? I know you just
Yeah,
referenced 40.
Ours is high right now, and it's, we're at approximately 4.5 million. We've been lucky recipients of some tax forfeited mining dollars in the last few years.
This is really exciting that to see Virginia and Eveleth Gilbert working together. I mean, it's just great. And I like the fact that you're coming to the board in advance with a plan and you've done your homework and looked at other models that already exist rather than building something, you know, recreating the wheel. And you've done your homework, so I applaud you. This is kind of how I'd like to see projects going forward. My question is, and Roy can probably chip in here, and I think Representative Sandsteed was even in the meeting with us when we were over in Grand Rapids High School. We were looking at IS, we were looking at the STEM program, and that's a program that tries to get at, you know, is building partnerships with businesses and getting students on career pathways. But it's not as all in as an academy model. It is students can do the traditional student thing, or they can choose a pathway, which seems a little safer. So my question to you is, why are you choosing the academy all-in model, and what do you do if it doesn't work?
That's actually a great question. It's going to work. This baby's going to work. These exist all over the United States. They just happen not to exist here. Alexandria is the most well-known one in the state of Minnesota, the granddaddy, so to speak, but they're sprinkled all over the United States through all sorts of consortiums and organizations. So we have, even though I know it's new up here, there's a lengthy history of other schools who have done this. And so we're going to know what they have done and what's worked well. And then, because the general idea is, as you picked up on, we're looking at all kids. So we want to take care of all kids, so wherever their interests are going, we have career paths for them to head down. For the kids who want to be electricians and plumbers, for the kids who still want to go to Harvard and have that kind of a dream for whatever reason. So I'm really confident because of things I've done and where we've been and the public input we've had has been tremendous. This baby is making sense with the people who just regular folks. This makes sense to them. They get it. Like, I don't have to spend 30 minutes explaining it to them. They get it right away and say, wow. We have people who have gone to Alexandria and they're coming back and they're going, wow, we need to do this tomorrow. We talked to our kids and I said, what did you think about Eveleth, Gilbert, Virginia? And I thought they were going to say, no way, would we ever do it? And they're going, we don't care about that. We want that. Because that model makes sense. Because the whole idea is to get kids in classes that interest them, get kids in classes that they're motivated in, get kids in classes that are more actually real life, so that we don't have to say, well, someday you'll use this. In the real world you'll use this. Well, why are we waiting for the real world to show up? How about if we bring the real world to our kids? And so we're talking about that with our kids. So we are very confident that this baby's going to hum and rock and roll if we can get to that point.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Schmidt, a little bit of Iron Range history, because you're new to the range. There is precedent for Virginia and Eveleth working.
Yes.
In 1953, the Carpenters Local Union in Virginia and the Carpenters Local Union in Eveleth decided to merge. And they gave themselves a new number, and today it's Local 606, the Virginia Eveleth Carpenters Local. So there's precedent for this, and the year before I was born. So I wish you all the best. I think it could be just a wonderful opportunity for kids on the Iron Range.
Hats off to you all for pushing on this. I think this is exactly what I want to see my son grow up with, and other families want to see the same thing, is pushing the envelope forward so that we can be creative, think outside the box, and take the best examples from around the world and put them right up here, because we know how hard it's been to attract companies and businesses to the area. People aren't taking a handout anymore and staying for 10, 20 years. They're looking for education systems that'll give a better life to their kids, for the great outdoors and access to clean air and water. And we've got all that right here, and I'm excited to see this thing get off the ground. And you can count on my attendance at some meetings and helping support this in any way possible. My wife and I are excited.
Any further, Representative?
A little more about the Alexandria High School experience. You know about how long their system has been in place, and is that a 100% approach, or is it conventional route versus this,
They're entering their 5th year with both feet in the water, with both feet in. I mean, all their kids are doing it.
So it's basically encompasses. So they basically shoved, for lack of a better term, the conventional model to the aside. And,
yes.
And replaced. And so 5 years down. So you literally they put at least a generation of 9th graders plus out into the real world. Do they have any tracking on how those students perform once they graduate?
Yes, I can tell you exactly what they're telling us. What they're finding with the kids who are out, what they're finding, one is that more kids are staying in the Alexandria area once they graduate from high school, because they're staying at the local institutions. And then because they've done so much work with the businesses in the area, kids in Alexandria, they know where the jobs are in Alexandria. So and businesses, there's some internships and apprenticeships that are part of this with the high school kids. And so the employer side, they get a sneak preview at their kids, and so they can it gives them a pipeline. And so more kids are staying in the area, more kids are, and everybody said this, kids are more engaged, they're on task. Kids who went to college, and when they get to college, it's kind of an eye-opener for them. This is the Alexandria kids. Mm-hmm. They said they'd meet with a whole bunch of other college kids, and it's not uncommon for even kids in college to say, you know, what are you going to do with your life? And for a college kid to say, I don't know. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Maybe my sophomore year, I'll pick a major. Well, the Alexandria kids, they know exactly what they want to do. And there's still some shifting, but they have a pretty good idea. So they're on course faster, they're getting through their programs faster, and they are coming back to Alexandria and saying, I'm glad I went there. But I will say this, when they first started it, and they told us that after the first 6 months, they were all ready to quit. Because it was hard. It's a big system change, but they're very glad they stuck through it. And they're telling us that it's been all upside for them.
I guess it's a further comment. That sounds like a little bits and pieces the way Aiken High School used to operate with opportunity. I mean, this was really down at the basic level. So if you staggered your hours, you could squeeze out 2 study halls, 6th and 7th hour, and they just have nightmares now. But those older 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds were going down the street into the factories doing things, and coupled with shop and a bunch of other things, technical side stuff. But that's, I don't want to date myself, but that's 50 plus years ago. And that worked.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And especially, it used to be called vocational training, but even back then, most schools only did it with part of the student.
Yeah, you could go this track, and the kind of the collective thing was that Uncle Sam got you when you hit 18 anyway in that era, whether you liked it or not. You were going to go for 2 years minimum if you were healthy. Anyway, no, I appreciate that.
I had a couple of intersections with Alexandria in my life, and one was when I was at Deed as commissioner. I spent some time there when, this was 2011, 12, and they were just getting into the academy model. But they have a long history of working with the high schools, working with their local industries in their industrial arts programs and stuff. So the collaboration between business and schools there has been pretty long. But I also want to say when the communities get behind it, so I worked for Cross Anderson Construction when they built the school down there and went through the whole referendum period with the company. The taxpayers, they had overwhelming support to build a $60 million school, all funded by the local taxpayers, not by a collaboration fund or anything like that. So I'm very encouraged by the kind of participation and that the people want this in the community too. That's important.
Are there any college credits that happen through these pathways?
It's still high school. I mean, they're still there. Your traditional CP courses, your college English, your
any college
trigonometry, calculus, they're all still there.
They're still there.
And they're earning college credit?
Absolutely.
Any other comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
IRRR Bell program, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Northeast Higher Education District's Iron Range Engineering Program is seeking to capitalize on its project-based learning model and recent success of being named one of the top 5 emerging world leaders in engineering education by developing and delivering a hybrid version of Iron Range Engineering known as the IRRR Bell program. This innovative new initiative partners with pre-engineering schools across the country and brings students to the Iron Range for 5 months of intensive training in project-based learning and professional skill development. Students then return to their home state for engineering internships, returning periodically to the Iron Range for evaluations and graduation. The development of the Bell program not only increases the visibility of Northeast Minnesota on a national level, but the creation of a number of well-paid positions and the infusion of out-of-state tuition dollars into the region make it an economic development investment as well. The program is requesting an investment of up to $5 million dispersed over a 4-year period, and those disbursements will be based on enrollment and program success. I have President Bill Mackey of the Northeast Higher Education District, along with Ron Alsatz, Director of Academics and Research at Iron Range Engineering here to answer any questions, gentlemen.
Welcome. Go ahead and make your presentation. Say your name first before you start talking.
Bill Mackey, President of the Northeast Higher Education District. Well, Mr. Chair, members of the board, we appreciate the opportunity to talk more about our request. I want to start by differentiating the IRE program that was established originally and the Iron Range Engineering Belt program that we are here proposing today. What we found with Iron Range Engineering, after having 150 graduates, that primarily are students that came from our region and work in our region, is that we have a lot of intellectual capital and unique characteristics for engineering education that are not commonplace in higher education. And when we started this journey, we looked at how would we go about capitalizing on that. In 2016, we came to the Iron Range Higher Ed Committee asking for a feasibility study, funding for a feasibility study to look at the time, expanding Iron Range Engineering. And as we entered into that process, it became apparent early on that we wanted to make sure that the great work and the success of Iron Range Engineering stayed pure in this process. So we shifted gears a bit and moved more to looking at a startup model and keeping it on a separate lane than the traditional Iron Range Engineering. So as we talked about Iron Range Engineering and its new model, it's based on the same partnership with Minnesota State University Mankato and a bachelor's degree in integrated engineering, a new department that Minnesota State University Mankato created to accommodate our unique way of delivering engineering education in northern Minnesota back when Iron Range Engineering started. We decided, building upon that, with this Bell program, which had a couple other names along the way. And the first step we did after a $100,000 investment was we looked at working with our primarily members of our National Advisory Board for Iron Range Engineering and other leaders in engineering education is a curriculum that is based on cooperative education where students are working full-time, earning $20 to $25 an hour while they're going to school. Is that a feasible way to deliver the same basic assets of the model of the traditional Iron Range Engineering? So we landed on this 2.5-year program, or this 2.5-year curriculum, where the first 4 or 5 months of the curriculum is coming to the Iron Range and learning about some of the things that Iron Range Engineering is known for. Some of it could be simply characterized as something that comes up often in talking with business and industry as the soft skills portion. So our engineers, when they graduate, they start off with a leg up on their colleagues in public speaking, in working in teams, and being self-directed learners, taking advantage of those and making that part of this curriculum, and then sending them off on their way to work for business and industry full-time for 2 years while they're going to school and getting an online education from professors that live on the Iron Range. So that was step one, was validating with engineering educators that this delivery method and that this curriculum would work. And we received a green light from those educators and decided to proceed forward to step two. Step two was a second round of funding from the Iron Range Higher Ed Committee and the Minnesota State system, is to look, is there a market across the United States to draw students to come to the Iron Range and then go out and work in their home area to be part of this type of program. And we spent time over the last 6 months having faculty from community colleges around the country come to Giants Ridge, spend a couple days with us, validate the curriculum, see if they had students that would fit that type of learning delivery. In May, we had 2 groups of students come up to Giants Ridge, and we put them through a workshop to gauge interest, if they would be interested in a pilot program starting in July 2019, if we were fortunate enough to be able to launch one at that time. And the results of that survey and that feedback was that we believe we have a viable model that is worthy of launching a pilot to see if we can make a go of it. There's one real significant difference between the Iron Range Engineering financial model and the Iron Range Engineering Belt Program financial model that's important. As you know, the Iron Range Engineering is it's a high-cost program, but we believe it has high value. And there's annual funds that come from the Iron Range Higher Ed Committee every year to sustain Iron Range Engineering. The Iron Range Engineering Belt Program is a much more market-driven program that's expanding on a larger audience. So we are seeking startup funding to get this going, but the difference is a student pays about $8,000 a year in tuition to attend IRE through Mankato. We would have a tuition for this program of about $22,000 a year, so that when we were this model was fully implemented, tuition would cover the full cost of the model, and we wouldn't be reliant on any subsidies from any state or any other governmental agency to keep this going. It would be completely driven by the revenue that comes from the students. So as we've looked at this, we've really thought hard about how can we mitigate risk in doing this, because it is a startup, there are unknowns, there comes a certain point where you either got to launch it and you've done enough research to determine whether or not that's a good idea. And we feel strongly that we're at that point by going through that process that we did. The other thing that gives us a comfort in starting this is not a new program. It's building upon an existing successful program. IRE in some ways built off a successful program at Itasca, so the 2-year program. So there was a little less risk there because we had a model in place. The IRE Belt program is building off Iron Range Engineering, which has been successful. We have 150 graduates. We have the recognitions that Mr. Smith mentioned. So we have less risk in that way, in that we know that this model works and that we've been successful a couple different times with it. Financially, we've also spent a lot of time on the business end of this, looking at how we can sustain this going forward. And we've developed, there's kind of 4 different pathways where this could go. One model is, and the model we hope for, is that by the time we have this fully implemented, we would have about 70 to 75 students coming to the Iron Range every 6 months for this program. We also have another scenario where we have a model where we'd have at full strength about 50 students. And then we have one where we could do it at 25 students. If we were not able to do it at any of those lengths, then we would need to shut the model down, because that would mean it wasn't successful. So accordingly, our request would be fashioned and is fashioned in such a way that we need $2.5 million in the first 2 years to evaluate how things are going, and then the next 2 years, the difference could be anywhere from up to another $2.5 million to as little as $1.5 million, depending on which pathway was chosen under the success that we had at that point. And I think that's a real important piece of this, because we do not want to get into the same situation where it's an unknown where funding is coming from moving forward. So we want to take something that's a marketable asset that we've developed on the Iron Range, and we want to bring it to a larger marketplace. And as I sit here being responsible for 5 2-year colleges in our region, our enrollment is down 25% since fall 2010. And I look at the demographics and the higher education demand in the whole state of Minnesota between now and 2029, the demand for 2-year college and regional public university education is going to be down from anywhere from 7.5% to 15%. Our neighboring states are going to be down from 2.5% to 7.5%. We have to go to different places to find students to come to our area. The high tuition rate is there in order to not subsidize it eventually after startup with local and state tax dollars. The piece of our request, I see it being 3 elements, is one is that there is an economic development portion of this. Under the smallest model, we will have hired 15 new professors and staff for this model that will live here. At the high end of the model, that number will be in 40 to 45. It also has a talent development component of it, in that we'll be bringing more talent to the range for the infrastructure of this program, but hopefully some of them will stay here. And some of our students and some of the interest we've had has been from students in Minnesota, from Rochester area, from Century College in the Twin Cities, but the majority of it has been out of this state. And then thirdly, for the future of having viable higher education on the range, we can't just continue to rely on the same populations and programs that we have in the past. And it doesn't come along very often that you have something special that others from all over the country recognize as something different. Otherwise, we're talking about trying to recruit students up here where they have to drive by or fly by many other colleges and universities that have the same program. This program is unique and others do not have it, so I believe it could be a really strong destination program. And the risk, again, is there, but I believe we've taken a lot of steps to try to mitigate that and have plans in place, an exit ramp in place if it does not work. But I do believe the way we were looking at this, it will work. And the reason we have 3 different models is that we have accreditation standards to meet with the ABET, which is the engineering accrediting body. And so we need to have certain student to faculty ratios that are relatively low. They're around 10 or 12 to 1 staff faculty member to student. And that's what ABET accreditation is. And by starting this Bell program, we could be accredited immediately because of the success we've had with IRRR and with the Bell program. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and we'd stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair, no, I do not.
I was going to say you did a pretty good job. So. Any questions or comments?
Well, maybe I can make.
Commissioner.
Can I make one?
Yeah.
Okay. So, when Superintendent Blanchard was talking about kids having an anxiety before they don't want to come to school in the morning, that's a little bit how I felt this morning. I wanted to show up to work this morning after. So there's been a lot of discussion about there's been a lot of support for Iron Range engineering. You know, I was using an analogy, we're kind of pregnant. You know, we've invested $350,000 in the feasibility, and I think people would recognize that President Mackey's done a good job on analyzing that feasibility and everything. So then the question comes, where do you fund the thing? And, you know, we don't have a lot of choices there. So we've just completed a budget cycle, and it's not budgeted any other way. So really it's the school collaboration fund and or the DJJ fund. And both these funds have constituencies that would prefer that they get funded out of the other fund. And we've heard a lot publicly from the school people that, oh, don't take it out of the school fund. And then I've heard privately more from economic development world is, you know, she should be funding K-12 education when we're investing about $11.5 million a year into K-12 now. Well, if that isn't enough, now we got to go into our economic development fund. So it's an issue. And so what I looked at on the school fund was the cash flow. So are we going to be hampering our ability to do any school collaborations going forward? So if we funded all of the proposals you heard today, including this, after production year 18, we'd have about $22 million still left in the school collaboration fund, and then about a $10 or $11 million year cash flow every year after that coming in. So funding the Virginia, Eveleth, any kind of construction or any kind of academic help or any other ones across the range, in my humble opinion, we have the resources, even if we funded IRRR Bell, to do any of these collaborations. Because I think there's been an impression left that if we did this, we can't do that. And I just don't see that myself. And then, of course, I don't know if I'm probably not the oldest person in the room, but I went to school when the junior college was in our building, and And the technical college was owned by our school district, had nothing to do with the state of Minnesota. So I get this message on social media even that these aren't schools. So I have a hard time with that, growing up with the community and technical colleges being part of my school. And all of a sudden, these aren't schools. We can't fund this out of this fund because these aren't schools. By some definition, it could be in statute, it could be somewhere. But in my mind, these are schools. These are our kids. The Saba Community College or whatever, Itasca or whatever, these are our kids. I don't know, so I came down on the side because we have the cash flow to do this without hampering our ability to do anything else for our kids in our district, so I chose this. If the board advises me that they'd rather take it out of DJJ, I'm going to take the board's advice on this one, okay? So you give me advice. I want this to be debated here for the public to hear where they want to take it out of. Because I'm feeling a little beat up about this, frankly. My intentions are pure. I want to see IRE Bell funded because I hope we can get to the point where we're not funding IRE for the next 40 years out of our higher ed money, because I'd like to see more innovation, frankly, out of this fund into other things. So I think I've said what's on my mind, but have a debate about where you want to take the money from. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Phillips, I don't think there's any deservedness to get beat up over it by any means. I think that we just need to find a solution. This has been something we've talked about at the higher ed committee level a few different times now, and I know that funding the pilot was controversial. Now seeing that there's a potential for it to work is exactly what you described. We've got something that is halfway there and we need to make it whole. In my mind, the money should come out of the DJJ versus this account. I think that the school collaboration account was a pretty tough fight to begin with, where we started 6 years ago. Now we've got folks with different ideas that are looking at figuring out ways to collaborate and do things together. And I think we should leave that separate and allow them to continue to work with that. However, I do think we should fund this through the DJJ, and I am going to hold one more higher ed account meeting. I think just, in terms of this being outside that committee's jurisdiction, one of the things that the higher ed committee has really pushed for is how do we find matching money at the state level? Because we've got such a successful program here that should be getting duplicated all over the state, and I don't think there's anyone on the board that would disagree with that. But we need to figure out how we can collaboratively work in our elected roles down at the Capitol to convince our colleagues, and specifically those on the higher ed committees, that this warrants investment from the state to help push it further, so kids from outside the area who want to come and learn engineering and get into a field can do that. And so I'm going to call one more meeting, and anyone who wants to participate, the idea I think can be, how do we get the legislation started and who do we get to start working on it? But I do think, going back to the original statement, we should keep the two separate. It took a lot of work on this board to get just the school account now to figure out where we can come debate what's getting brought up in these meetings, and to muddy the water with the higher ed program with a risky endeavor, but one that I think can work if we continue to push it, would be to just transfer that funding. And I guess I'd ask, I had spoken a little bit just through text messages with Senator Bach yesterday about this, and I guess I'd look to your guidance a little bit there, Senator. I was just describing maybe the DJJ is a better home for the funding of this, and that I was going to call one more higher ed committee meeting to look to put together some legislation to actually get some state funding.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm a bit reluctant to use the school account for this, just for pure precedent of it. I don't really like using the DJJ either. Remember when we just did trails recently, I voted against that. I think that trust fund is for the future, but I know a lot of effort has gone into getting this whole thing kind of on the ground, so I don't want to be the one that kills all the work that has been put into it, but my preference would be if we amend the resolution to take it out of the DJJ. I just think, I try to defer to local government officials when to the extent that I think I can, and our school superintendents seem to feel pretty strongly about the kind of the integrity of that fund being for K-12. But I will say, unless we start to see, and today we saw a couple smaller projects come forward, unless we see some coming forward and schools start to utilize the fund, I'm perfectly fine with sunsetting it so we don't have this argument about what we're going to spend it on, and just moving it all into the JJ going forward. So, because I don't want to have a battle every year about whether something fits the criteria of the fund or not. And kind of opening it up like this is going to, I mean, next thing, Vermillion College is going to be in here with an idea, and Itasca is going to be in here with an idea, and they'll look at it just as another pot of money because there's money sitting around, and I wouldn't blame them. But once we go down that road, I think we're going to be batting away a lot of other probably very good requests. And I do think that if we can find a way to secure some state money, I do think higher ed is a state obligation, not a local property tax one. That I'd certainly be willing to work on that this next session.
Mr. Chair, I would support funding out of the DJJ. I have heard a lot from my school superintendents, quite a bit here, about their concerns about it, the K-12 funding of this. And so I think while the project is merits funding, I would like to see it come out of, based on the conversations I've had with my school superintendents, out of the DJJ.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I might be one of the only ones at this table that's actually worked with somebody from Iron Range Engineering, my former employer at PCA, and it's a terrific program. So I compliment you guys on that. And the paper company up there has a hard time getting interns to come from some of the colleges, and it's been a terrific filler for them. I concur with my colleagues here. I think it should come out of the DJJ. But I also like what Senator Bach had to say is we got to start seeing some collaboration from the schools, or that money is going to go away because it could have other use. So maybe that should be your task, superintendents. Get to work on some collaboration and see if we can get something done and get that money used what it was properly set up for.
Some projects in here today where things are happening, so that's a start.
I've got a more general question. It looks like we're already a rush to, it's a question of how we're going to fund this. And I'm not there yet, not even close. You talk about 25% reduction in enrollment since what, 2010, that time frame? And you look into the future, is this our opportunity to salvage that? Is that what you're betting your hat and gas mask on? That this is going to change the enrollment picture long-term here for our region of state colleges? That's what I sense, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the context of loss of enrollment historically.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lewick, the students in this IRRR Bell program will actually be students that are students at Minnesota State University Mankato. So I didn't mean to misrepresent that the IRRR Bell program is going to feed students to address the 25% enrollment decline at the 5 two-year colleges. What I was trying to get at is that having momentum builds in a very positive way or can build in a real negative way, and being known as having this type of program in our region will hopefully create a different image that extends beyond boundaries that aren't traditional to our colleges and help with enrollment in those areas.
A little follow-up, if I could, Mr. Chair. When you talk about boundaries, beyond traditional boundaries, we're talking about obviously outside of the IRRB resource boundaries, but are we talking out of the state of Minnesota? Are we talking out of the continental United States? Are we talking overseas? Are we now way up in the stratosphere as to what we're trying to do here on a macro scale? Talking about student recruitment.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lewick, for the IRE Bell program, it is geared to draw students from out of state and to draw students from outside of our area, because we don't, our demographics are really hurting our institutions, and we haven't maxed out completely, but we have something, again, that we believe is really unique that could draw students here, get students here to live here for a few months, have new faculty and staff here, but charge a rate too that is not in line with what goes on across the country, so that this is a self-supporting program. So we are looking at this being a national model for community college transfers everywhere.
One other follow-up, if I could, Mr. Chair, and as you know, we're playing in the state level higher education world. What kind of specific communication have you had with the St. Paul folks on this at the higher ed level? Where do they fit in this? Obviously, we're still a state college in the region, so what do they got to say about this? Are they just applauding this? Go ahead, spend your money on it, or are they kind of like, we'll wait and see? Or
Mr. Chair, Representative Lewick, to this point, the conversations at the state level have been with our chancellor, and they've also the system has also invested money in us studying this model. So we received a $50,000 grant last January to study or look at the student aspect of it. If we were fortunate to get this approved, the next step would be going to our system board of trustees to allow us to charge that tuition rate that is 3 times the rate of what Iron Range engineering students pay now in order to sustain that model. And to date, I believe we have support for doing that. So we until those are the extent of the discussions. They're aware that we're pursuing this, and they have invested to some extent in helping us do so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I want to emphasize that one of the big things we're looking to do here isn't about serving students as much as it is about bringing wealth into our region from outside our region, using the successes that we collaboratively have had with Iron Range Engineering. We've got something here that the rest of the world looks at, but we aren't benefiting economically from that. And through these tuition dollars that will come into our state, right here in our region, through the 3 models that President Mackey addressed, in the lowest model, it's $3 million of tuition into the region. And at the highest model, it's $8 million, and that's per year. So this is really, I like the idea that it's economic development, because that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to capitalize on a resource that we've created to bring wealth into our region, and also talent.
I say that sort of, I'm still not, I'm reluctant that this is a way to go forward. It makes a little more sense, but I mean, you're talking about an economic development model here. And it doesn't sound like the students they're part of the process. You got to have customers to make money, and I don't mean that in a derogatory manner, but that does put it clearly in the economic development approach, and just happens to be that the industry is education. So, yeah, I certainly cannot support tinkering with the K-12 thing, but I will echo the concept that if you leave money sit there long enough, it's going away. And again, that's just the way the world works, and that's got nothing to do with, that's the way government works. If it sits there unspent, somebody's going to ask for it. So that's a message, again, Superintendents, you all heard that. But no, that does clarify in my mind a little more what this approach is.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have prepared an alternative resolution which would take the money out of DJJ corporates. Maybe this would be a good time for us to pass that out. It would replace the resolution that's in the packet.
If you want to do that.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, there seems to be some consternation, I believe, over the tuition rate, and so I'm wondering if either President Mackey or Mr. Alseth could explain, even at 3 times the tuition rate, the IRRR Bell program is still much cheaper than most engineering programs. If I were to say that, Mr. Alseth, could you verify that?
Maybe we should charge more.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the part about this being an apprenticeship model is, and President Mackey alluded to this, these people are making a lot of money, about $40,000 per year while they're going to school. So while we're charging a lot more, their out-of-pocket is still considerably less.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I also agree that I think the most appropriate place at this time being is for it to come out of the DJJ. I think this is a great program. I've heard their presentation a couple times, and I know we always talk about leveraging state dollars, and I think they have a very compelling story. If we get these two in front of both of our higher ed committees, I think there really is an opportunity to get some money from the state level, and I'd be willing to work with anybody at this table to do what we can to make sure that happens. So with that, I would think the DJJ is the best spot for it. I think this is economic development, and it's an amazing opportunity to bring outside dollars into our state, and I think it's something we can really shine at. They've already proven, you know, on a nationwide scale that you guys have had, I think you've had several awards already to prove that this model works. And what you're doing here works, and I think this exact same thing is being done in another country as well, and it's working there. So I think there is some precedent that, you know, this isn't an overly risky investment. Certainly there's still risk in any kind of investment you do, but I think this, you know, could really serve our area well, and I think it's important that we move forward for this, again, out of the DJJ fund, so I would certainly vote for that resolution.
Can I make it unanimous? The DJJ fund is appropriate? Yeah, oh, not quite. Well, when I first heard the presentation, my first comment was this is an economic development project, because in my experience in economic development, you look at a region building on an asset, which we're doing here. We've got this great asset in the Iron Range Engineering Program. You look at the history of the people involved. Have they been successful at this kind of work before? Yes. Ron Alseth and his folks have been very successful and have won national awards. And, you know, I don't want to maybe compare it to Mayo Clinic, but that's kind of what Mayo is doing for Rochester. Yeah, they're serving patients and they're in the healthcare business, but they're building on that great asset to build a whole economic model, you know, in Rochester. And so if this is a part of our economic model, that would be fabulous if we became known as the place where you go to get, you know, the best engineering education. So I think that with all of that, I think the DJJ fund, when I think of some of the projects that we funded out of DJJ that have not done so well, I feel better about this project.
Accentuate the positive. So let me just say that what I really, really like about the Bell program is the spotlight that it's going to put on northeastern Minnesota, because it's going to be the only place in the country that has a program like this. And I believe it'll actually bring people in who will come here and end up staying here as opposed to going back to where they were from, and it might even attract other business. But I mentioned earlier in the meeting that all the money comes from the same place. And in this particular case, I understand the commissioner's desire to take it out of the school fund, because we actually increased the escalator that brings in the next 2 years. That brings in about $2.5 million a year, and that $2.5 million a year that's going into this fund is now not going into the Douglas J. Johnson Fund. So, you know, it's pay me one place and give it to another place, or take it from one place and give it to another place. So I'm not going to quibble about where this money should come from, and I'm happy to vote for the Douglas J. Johnson thing. I'm just happy to fund the thing. But the fact of the matter is that all these people who have been screaming and yelling at us for the last 4 days, you know what? The money all comes from the same pot, and we get distributed out any way we want to, and everybody's still going to get their money. So don't ever think about this money going away and not being able to go to K-12 schools, because there's that one little part in the statute that says "or for any other use," which means we can use it for anything we want if we want to. And so I'm just a little bit miffed that we got as much flack for this particular proposal as we did. But as I said, I'm fine to take it out of the Douglas J. Johnson Fund, because all the money comes from the same place and it comes into this agency, and it's incumbent upon us to hand it out.
Mr. Chairman, now I remember the one thing I forgot to say. So this morning I signed an invoice for over, I think it was $2.3 million for bond payments for Iron Range schools. They were not done on the school collaboration fund. So I'm just trying to build on your thing that it all comes out of one pot. So the legislature, the board has authorized school bonds in different ways over the years. So I think I'm with Senator Tomassoni. We're not going to let good projects go by the wayside. Somebody asked me the other day, a community said I didn't get my grant. We try to fund every grant project we can. Again, what we look for are, do they create jobs? Do they provide good leverage of our money? We're stewards of this tax money. So today we spent $1.2 million on grants, or something of $12 million worth of construction will take place. That's important. If we just give it away on one-to-one match or even less, then we spend $10 million a year on grants, and what do we get in construction? $10 million. You know, we want that leverage. 7-to-1 is our average leverage over a year, I think, Chris, or something like that.
Actually, a lot
higher than that today. So I would never abandon it. I married a school superintendent, for God's sake. Against K-12 education in some way. So, having said that,
So, does everybody want to do the Douglas J. Johnson? Is that what I'm thinking? Okay, and so that's resolution 007. Sounds like the James Bond movie here. Representative Metza moves resolution 19007, seconded by Representative Eklund. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion is adopted. Thank you very much. And the last thing on the agenda is the Giants Ridge update. While Linda's coming up here, I want to take a moment to wish Representative Rookavina a happy birthday today. Former Representative Rookavina was on the board for 26 or 28 years or something. And, he's still a youngster, I think. So if he hasn't yelled at any of you lately, he probably will in the very near future. So what do we got here?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I know we're running along, so I just want to get through this presentation, and if we want to spend a lot more time on Giants Ridge, we can schedule more time in a future meeting. So I just want everybody to feel like we're keeping everybody so over time.
This isn't even a long meeting for some of us.
Yeah, I know.
I've been through long.
Yeah, so why not time for dinner yet? All right, what do you want to do, Linda?
Chairman Tomassoni, board members, today we have a presentation by Guest Services, who is the management company who has been assigned to Giants Ridge. And so I will let Fred Seymour introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about yourself. And after they're done, they'll provide a PowerPoint presentation and also the handout that we provide.
Okay, go ahead and say your names for the record so we have you on tape.
Fred Seymour, General Manager of Giants Ridge.
And I'm Laura Sherman. I'm the Senior Managing Director of Guest Services.
John Kendall, Director of Golf.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman and Board, thank you for having us here today. And we just want to give you an overview of what the last year since the model has changed at Giants Ridge and give you an update as to what's going on. Guest Services is a unique organization which has been in existence for over 100 years, and our core mission is commitment to excellence in delivering legendary hospitality. With that, we also partnered with Billy Casper Golf, which is a national golf management firm, allowing for seamless delivery of service and enhancement of guest experience. Some of our portfolio that Guest Services manages throughout the country is listed above, which is the Mount Rainier National Park. We've been there for over 40 years. Echo Bluff State Park, which is in Missouri. Everglades National Park in Florida, which we just started this year. We also own and manage the DoubleTree Guest Suites in Naples, Florida, as well as Lodge at Breckenridge, to name a few. We have probably 200 units throughout the country that we manage at all different levels, some as small as 5 employees, some as large as 250 employees. Our golf operations for 2017 to 18, which that fiscal year just ended in June, green fees grew by 14%, driven with higher average rates. Our group bookings rounds increased by 10.6% over 2016.
Excuse me, the greens fees grew by 14%, means it cost more to golf there, or more people came to golf there?
It cost more to play. The rounds were about flat year over year. But we were able to increase the rates in September. We found September to be a peak time period. People want to be there to golf, and that's where most of our growth was, in that September time frame. And then our lodging rounds and
What is
partnerships.
it now, 95?
Pardon me?
How much are greens fees, 90?
Last year, our greens fees were,
They topped out at about $97
Yeah.
plus
mhm. And then we also offered different rates to the IRRR residents, and the other community residents who were discounted rates. And midweeks, of course, are a little bit less to golf than during the weekends. And then partnering with the lodging accommodations, we're able to grow that percentage by 11.3%, and that's with the accommodations on site as well as throughout the Iron Range area.
And that's the number of people that came, not the cost, right?
That's the number of people, correct, yes. And if we move over to ski, we were able to open last year, Thanksgiving weekend, which was the first in a number of years, so we were able to open that early. We were fortunate enough to have our 2 brand-new ski lifts open and operational for the winter season last year. Of course, Christmas was an extremely cold period. We lost a little bit of ground there, but because of the extended snow and the great march that the whole industry saw, we were able to exceed our budgets for 2017 and 18. Our lift tickets we were able to offer successfully on our website, with our majority of our sales were coming from the Minnesota market, 8% were coming out of state, which is really the surrounding states in the area, and 12% of our business came from Canada. Some of our marketing campaigns that you may have seen throughout the year, which we were pretty proud of, was our most successful Bridge at the Ridge, where we, on social media campaigns with over 71,000 visits. We promoted Kids Ski Free and discounts to area lodgings. And that's key to get people engaged, kids engaged at a younger age and keep them committed to the sport as they grow up. Partner with the Iron Range Tourism Bureau on collateral, trade shows, and advertising. We sponsor the Minnesota State High School League tournaments, including state hockey, primarily down in the Twin Cities past year. And we hosted several other events throughout the summer and fall months, which were Rampage at the Ridge, the Grind Bike Race, the Pepsi Challenge, which has been going on for a number of years, and other numerous high school championships. This slide shows our comparisons with the nation and with the Midwest on both the golf level as well as ski. And you'll see that on a national level, both golf and ski are decreasing, while Giants Ridge has successfully increased 1.8% for golf rounds, and skier visits were up 10.7%. And interestingly enough, the Midwest in ski was up 15.4%, and that's a lot attributed to how successful this March and spring break was this past year. But we continue to see it growing in our region, and I think that's building the awareness with the phenomenal lifts we've put in and with the great golf facilities we do have.
So as long as you got hole number 7, that's hole number 17 up there, isn't it? On the legend, how many golf balls did you find in the lake this year?
He goes diving every day.
They couldn't pull it. It went down, but it was too rough.
And this next slide compares our operational spending at Giants Ridge for the whole operation. As you can see, it was peaking at 3.5 million in fiscal year 17, whereas this year we're able to have operational savings of $500,000. And a lot of that was attributed to payroll savings, overall operational efficiencies, and we were successful this year in bridging our employee base so that we had full-time staff that would transition from golf to ski or vice versa, ski to golf. So eliminate some of that job fair, having that constant recruiting from season to season, and it increased our full-time base. We have about 165 employees throughout the year, which has been a great growth for us, offering them full benefits, medical, dental, and vision. So with the new model change in operations, as we said, there was a $500,000 in operational savings. Ski revenue increased 30%, and that and this year we also brought merchandise and retail and rentals in-house, and that increased 75% of our revenues that had been brokered out before. And with the enhanced ski channel, ski pass revenue increased 10%, and then we'll start offering our ski passes for the 18-19 season starting next week, September 1st. You will see some operational costs that increase, but that really increased due to the increase in revenues year over year. And as we know, there was a turf damage this past year with the brutally cold winter. So we have some pictures of what we found at the beginning of the season and where we are now. The recovery on the greens has been slower than we expected. We had anticipated full recovery by August 1st. At this point, we've had the USGA in, we've had Billy Casper's agronomist in. It is a biological system. It is growing, it's improving week over week with our aggressive course maintenance, and we anticipate full recovery by the end of the season, which will be about mid-October. And of course, the goal is to prepare the courses for the winter months so we're ready for 2019, and then we're back to fully operational.
So can we mitigate this from happening again?
With, weather permitting. But we're taking all the steps and precautions that we can.
Is covering a green with plastic or something like that an option? I mean, is there something that you can do that?
Well, we've done that in the past. John can speak a little bit more to that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we've done a variety of things to prepare for winter over the years. There have been years we've used a permeable cover and designed to shed surface water off the green. What we saw with the situation with that is we were trapping more water than shedding. So there have been damage. There's been years we've had damage with the covers, years we've had damage without the covers. It really just depends on the conditions that we have in those critical months at the beginning of winter. We've had damage because we've had excessive rainfalls once the ground froze. In a situation like that, we're going to have damage. And that was similar to what we had this year. We had very saturated ground going into winter, and that soil profile just was very, very wet, very solid, and then we had a bad spring coming out, a very harsh freeze-thaw cycle. So there's no real magic bullet. We're just trying to prepare the course to be as healthy as possible going into winter to hopefully get that grass through. I might add, all the things that made for a great ski season made for, unfortunately, the situation coming in, out of the spring in a bad golf situation.
Because we also skied till April 9th, which was much longer than, a couple weeks longer than.
And you thought this was going to be easy to do.
Exactly, right? Mr. Chairman, so the Billy Casper people, the USGA, I asked the same question. Best thing to do is have the course in the best possible shape, correct, as we end this year, to have the best chance for next year. But if we have the exact same perfect storm with spring and fall and freeze and thaw, we have that danger. Now, we were, I don't want to point fingers, but we reacted and we thought they'd come back faster than they haven't, so we've done extraordinary measures to get there. If we had another damage, would we make some different decisions? I assume we might.
We would make.
We were going to saw it, and then we decided not to. If you were going to do that, you should do that right away. We didn't. We decided not to do that. So, and a newly sodded green is more susceptible to damage the following year, so that wasn't a smart decision. By bringing our courses back gradually, we're going to have a better experience for next year, we believe. So.
And of course, it has impacted this season with July and August, but we do hope to restore it to prior levels next year. We continue to see high demand through the end of August and into September. We've kept the green fees competitive with the region because the other golf courses have experienced the same types of damage. And we've adjusted those rates through till the October 21st date when we anticipate closing. And then again, our group base remains strong for the fall months. This just shows some demographics on the golf industry as a nation, where we're seeing more juniors, young adults, and those percentages starting to grow. That's the focus, to try and grow those areas, whether it's youth, whether it's women. We're going to do that through different activities that we'll generate throughout the year. We'll continue with our Nine and Dine package and training and classes to just continue to build and develop so we have a strong base that's going to carry on with the golf moving forward. Some of our marketing and golf initiatives at Giants Ridge for this next year will be a heavy focus. We'll start early, probably late December. We'll continue to penetrate the Twin Cities, in Rochester and the greater Minneapolis markets, our surrounding states and areas, Sioux Falls, Des Moines, Central Indiana, Milwaukee, and Chicago. Chicago is a large market for us. Continue the partnerships with the Explore Minnesota Golf Alliance, and further develop our relationships and marketing opportunities with some of the neighboring courses to include Superior National and the Wilderness. And then to continue, we want to still bring raters out, get the golf courses rated as where they should be with Golf Digest and other related organizations. So we do have raters coming at the first weekend of October to see the courses, and we feel comfortable that that will give us next year. Some of our growth opportunities overall for the property. We want to continue to build Giants Ridge as a preferred destination for outdoor recreation, introduce new events and activities to attract new guests to Giants Ridge, and that's particularly in the summer months, in the fall and the spring months when you don't have the heavy golf or heavy skiing. The mountain biking program just started this summer. We have 2 of the runs that are open right now. It has been very popular. And we continue to grow with revenues that, as well as running the lifts, which will run throughout the fall for the fall foliage. So we think that will impact us and more have a consistent base throughout the year. And we'll continue to grow all the ski and golf and other summer activities as we move forward. Our operational challenges, when you look at Giants Ridge, they're both golf and ski. All of our revenues are weather dependent. The labor pool continues to be limited and continues to compete with local industries. You know, we're fortunately able to attract people and have them there full time, but that will always remain a challenge. And then continue building the awareness of the Iron Range area to utilize Giants Ridge as a destination for activities, whether it's dining, social events, weddings, and other special events throughout the year. And one of the other challenges, we don't have that full onboard component of lodging. We have to reach out to partners to lodge with us, but we're not selling things as a package, whether it's golf or ski related. And then our operational threats. As you know how the Giants Ridge is funded, any shortfalls in revenue then leave us to revert to capital to eliminate some of our capital expenditures. And so then that defers purchases from year to year, and some of it can be very heavy equipment that's required from, snowmaking machines, mowers, and that type of thing. So what we would, we look for a committed capital fund needed to build the reserve accounts so it's a dependable amount that's building year after year that's being invested in, that we're getting interest income, and we have something to rely on that's consistent year over year and continues to build. Some of our other properties that we manage, we do various different types of funding for that reserve type funding, whether it's a percentage of revenue, whether it's a lump sum every month, but then that money is dedicated to those capital projects that are needed year after year. And some of those percentage of revenue are as low as 1%, and some are as high as 16%, depending on at some of our locations. So we'd like to be able to look at some other opportunities for capital funding.
Yes, so I asked our operations people here and accounting people to look at options, and we are looking at the ability to build that fund over time by both budgeting and looking at what we underspend in certain budgets. Can we keep building that account? So we would have a regular account for deferred maintenance. That wouldn't necessarily mean larger projects like we did with the lifts, or that wouldn't go to attempt to get state bonding or come back to the board. But I think the regular capital, we need to figure out a program. So I asked, I don't know if you want to get into today again, if you want to take the time. I asked Mary Ann and Dave to take a look at our ability to do that. If you want some comments on that?
Well, let's see if there's any questions of these.
Okay.
All right. Anybody have any questions of Representative Lehman?
Well, and maybe my question is for Mary Ann and Dave. I don't know. I mean, I think our overall question is, when do we get to a reasonable level of subsidy? Because the subsidy keeps growing and growing and growing. And when I was here, we spent a couple of years transitioning Iron World, from a public entity to a nonprofit entity. And we sat down and we developed a contract that said, okay, here's your cost of doing business, and you're not going to ever be profitable, but what level of subsidy should we tolerate going forward? And we came up with $1 million. And then we also put money into capital. So they had money to, because it was it's still a state asset. It's a museum, it's a state asset, and we have to preserve those assets and keep them. But I think people kind of like that, because now we know that we've all agreed, $1 million a year is reasonable to keep Minnesota Discovery Center going. But with Giants Ridge, it goes from $4 million to $6 million to $8 million to, just grows each year and we look at the budget. So I guess what I would like to hear from you as a management company is, what is your plan to get that subsidy down? Or do you even have a plan? Have you even been charged with developing such a plan?
Well, as we had said, we were able to this first year reduce our operational costs. So you have to look at it separately, and I think Dave's done a good job in separating that capital piece and the operational piece. And if you go to we will reduce our expenditures again moving into this next year. But of course, we've now been impacted by July and August, where we've lost revenues that we were counting on, and so that's going to impact us for this fiscal year.
Oh, and so what I've had Dave and Marianne working on is, so we formed a nonprofit, and can we use the nonprofit as a way to deal with some of the long-term capital expenditures issues by putting funding in there that could be, put back into for deferred maintenance and some of the capital costs. So I'm with you. We need to get the operations. So it's with state accounting, we have to budget the whole thing in. So we can't take revenue into account. So sometimes that number looks awfully big compared to what the end of the day number is, right? Am I correct? So we are working on operational efficiencies, reducing costs and everything, but yet we have a lot of deferred maintenance up there. The pipes in the grounds are 30-some years old. There hasn't been much spent on deferred maintenance, so we are going to have issues. So what I tasked them with, is there a way that we can look at that like you did at Iron World? Is there a way we can look at that where we can say, if we do this over the long haul and commit to it, that we can get out from underneath this deferred maintenance nightmare that we're in? Is that a fair statement?
Your problem is the weather. I mean,
well, then we have those ups and downs.
You never know what's going to happen, and plus there's all kinds of facilities up there that need to be taken care of, and those costs keep going up too. And maybe we can get some bonding dollars this next year.
Right, but we need. I agree with Representative Lehman in some respect. We need to get our arms around and get things into a more certainty mode than this. Every year we have a surprise kind of thing. So I'm agreeing with you, I guess, in a sense, but we have to be realistic too. this year, we're going to have to cut back on capital because we had such a disastrous thing with the greens. Our golf revenue took a dive, you know? Now, that didn't reflect in this report so much because our fiscal year ended on July 1. It's going to be in the fiscal year we're operating in now. At the end of this year, next June 30th, we're going to see, you know, can we have a great fall in golf? Can we, again, have a ski season? So last year we opened early, and then we had a 20, 30 below the whole month of December. So, you know, it is weather dependent. But we have to figure out how to operate this place with more certainty. I agree with you. We're working on that.
Well, based on the fact that you have, represent several different areas, things like this around the country, I got a funny feeling weather is probably not as big a deal in most of the other places as it is here, but in the alpine skiing area, that still has to be a big consideration, I would think. So how do you deal with the weather in other places, or don't you?
Well, I mean, honestly, most of our locations are weather impacted. I mean, you know, whether it's Florida where we have resorts, you know, we're operating Everglades that has been destroyed by hurricanes. You know, we've got Mount Rainier right now in Seattle, so there's smoke, there's fire, people aren't coming, so everything, you lose revenue all the time. So you have to cut back on expenses, and I think we've done a very good job on cutting back on expenses, and we manage against that way. But the bigger thing is, when we had those revenue shortfalls here, we're not setting anything aside for capital. We're just saying, we have to reduce our capital. So then it's deferred, and then we go year after year, still trying to catch up with what we should have spent 3 years ago.
Okay. Anybody want to hear from
Mary Ann?
Well, why don't you come up closer, Mary Ann, so you can be close to the microphone.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Representative Lehman, I just wanted to say that like our Iron World analysis, the Giants Bridge story is made up of component parts and different operational, capital, and one-time expenses. And one of the things that Dave has done is he's really helped to take those different streams and look at them over time to understand how one impacts the other and where we need to focus our energy in terms of long-range planning in order to help stabilize where you see some peaks and valleys, particularly in the one-time expenses and your capital investments, like the recent big dollar investments in the ski side of the operation. And we are not prepared today to do an analysis or a presentation for you, but in considering those numbers and what we've learned about the operation over time, we're seeing some financial planning that we can do using existing funding or new revenue streams to create an account, you know, right within our state funds that would allow us to set aside money every year in a not terribly painful fashion that would build towards the future. And there's an investment plan behind it, and there are other income streams behind it, and we would like, you know, to share more information about that with you at a later date.
Okay. Any other questions or comments of these?
I have one.
Representative Stanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On your ticket sales, you said the majority of the sales came from Minnesota. Do you have any information where in Minnesota? Is it primarily here on the range? Is it a balance across the state?
I wouldn't say it's a balance across the state.
Yeah, we had quite a bit of success regionally, as well as the Twin Cities market as well. So the Minnesota market itself was pretty balanced. The thing that was surprising to me was some of the out-of-state sales, but particularly the Canada sales as well.
And we did a little bit more intense advertising in the Twin Cities this past season as well, and last summer too, and I think that helped impact it.
Well, from my personal experience, even though the greens were in terrible shape this year, I still love those courses. They are just gorgeous. In fact, we golfed with a guy from Florida, and he goes, "Boy, you have hills and trees up here." they're pretty nice places. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? Then we're going to adjourn. Okay, thank you all very much for going through this today. This was a very good meeting. Meeting is adjourned.
I can find out.